Welcome to the Perfect Pairing Podcast. The cigar of the week this week is the Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect.
But before we get to that, if you guys don't know us already, my name is Chris, and I am the whiskey expert and the cigar noob.
And I'm Adam, and I'm the cigar expert, but the whiskey noob.
And in this episode of the Perfect Pairing Podcast, as Adam mentioned, we are going to be finding the perfect pairing for this Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect. If you've been around for a little while, we had a different Hiram and Solomon on, and if I'm remembering correctly, it paired very nicely. So I'm excited to see what happens here.
Oh yeah, definitely. That one I feel like was our introduction into Indonesian tobacco. Like, I feel like it was just one of those cigars that was so kind of unique. And this one, guys, we have such an interesting dynamic in this cigar today. So if you remember through your terminology, if you've been watching us for a little while, this is a Nicaraguan Puro almost. So the wrapper is a Nicaraguan Corojo. The binder is Nicaraguan. The filler has Lajero from Esteli and Jalapa, both Nicaraguan valleys. But they didn't want to just make it a Nicaraguan cigar. They put tobacco from Paraguay in this filler. So I have no idea how it's going to taste. I have had this cigar one other time, but I can't really remember the exact taste. So I'm excited to just kind of for once, kind of experience a true just cigar and be able to experience a new cigar, smoke it, new flavors, just go in not completely blind, but almost blind, and have it with some interesting pairings for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so far it's got a really nice flavor to it. We were actually talking right before we started recording that I've been on like a Corojo kick. Like this, I don't know what it is. I've been enjoying that flavor profile so much, and this is delivering much of that flavor profile so far. I haven't gotten into specific notes yet, but just right off the bat, this is what I've been into lately. I feel like for me, they've got the right balance of sweet and spice right now. Like sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes I like something lighter, but lately I've really not been in the mood for like Connecticut's and light things like that. But these just land in that nice kind of sweet spot. You get some of the chocolatey notes, but you still get some of like the grassy, almost hay or straw notes. So you get kind of a nice mix of the two. Not specifically with this cigar. I just mean with Corojo in general. I've taken like 2 puffs of this cigar, so I have no idea.
Right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let everybody know there was a little teaser if you go back, because I had a different trivia question, but I'm flipping it on Chris. I'm going to go ahead with my trivia question today because I was just thinking about it. I saw myself in the little camera there, so I was like, all right, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. So that was my only hint for the day. But what is the number one cause of canoeing in a cigar? Like canoeing, is it running down the side? Sometimes they call them runners, canoes. What else have I heard? Burners. People call it a lot of different things. I call it canoeing because, it makes it look like a boat on one side. Basically, what makes a cigar burn? What's the number one thing that makes a cigar burn unevenly and have that run down the side, and you got to keep relighting the other side and the other side and the other side, and it's just a hassle. So what's the number one thing? That's a trivia question for today.
I have 2 guesses. I don't know which one it's going to be, but I'll wait till the end and then I'll guess right before you reveal it.
Fair enough.
I have 2 things I think it could be. Now, so far, just to give a little bit of a noob review here for this Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect, loving the flavor, okay? It's got some of the traditional Corojo flavors that I've been enjoying so far, that I've really been into lately. But it's got something else, and it's a little bit lighter, and I think it's almost like a cracker or an animal cracker, graham cracker. I haven't nailed down like what I mean by that yet, but hopefully you'll understand what I'm talking about when you puff on it a little bit here. It still has a little bit of that chocolatiness. It's got a little bit of but there's something else that's in the neighborhood of, I don't even know how to put this other than in the neighborhood of a dry snack, like a graham cracker or an animal cracker. Like we're in that neighborhood.
Are you getting that flavor on the front of your tongue?
No, I think it's more on the retrohale for me, actually.
Okay. I am getting a pure Corojo. Like this It's a great Corojo. Like if you love Corojo, like Chris does right now,
Yeah.
nailing it, beautiful. What I'm trying to figure out is there is something in there where I think also in my head, I'm like, where is this Paraguay tobacco gonna put this cigar? Because I know Nicaraguan puros. I know a Nicaraguan puro Corojo. I know what it's supposed to taste like. I've had it before. And I'm like, what? Where is it happening? There's something happening for me in the front of my palate. But what we do know also from the traveling man from Hiram and Solomon, they have complex cigars. That is still to date one of the most complex cigars I've ever smoked. So for me, I'm excited to keep experimenting and going through this because I think one, these pairings are definitely obviously going to change things around, but I think it's one of those things. This is then I'll get off my soapbox and we'll get into pairing one because I'm excited about it and we don't want it to get too warm. But hint hint, the the part of this cigar and the entire Hiram and Solomon line that I just enjoy is that it's if you're somebody out there, sorry, I was trying to figure out my train of thought here. If you're somebody out there that loves a cigar experience, when we're talking like you sit down and you're not even playing music, you're not watching anything, you may be sipping on something, but you're just outside on your porch looking at the sky, enjoying a cigar, trying to notice nuances. I feel like Hiram and Solomon is the brand for you because you're gonna just enjoy it just is not going to be something that's simple and easy to figure out. It's going to grow with you the entire cigar. So again, I'll get off my soapbox, but yeah, I'm already convinced.
Well, I have the flavor note that I was looking for in this here Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect, and you're not going to like it.
Boy. All right. Let me just go ahead and pour my
Saltine
first pairing.
crackers. Saltine crackers. Okay.
Oh, crap. No, I'm getting it, okay?
Right?
I'm getting a
Right?
little... No, not right. It's wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah. No,
Wrong,
because
Chris.
it still don't get me wrong. Like it's not like this is a cigar that tastes like saltine crackers. This is a Corojo that tastes like Corojo and a little bit of saltine crackers. Like there's like, especially on the retro hail, man. Like it's pretty specific, but that's what it is. I really thought about it.
Are saltine crackers from Paraguay?
Good question.
I'm trying to figure out the Paraguay. Because I've never in my life even seen a cigar with Paraguay tobacco in it, let alone in the filler and smoked it. So
maybe that's what it is. Like maybe it's giving it that kind of lighter, almost salt and peppery flavor. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but it reminds me of a saltine cracker. Anyhow, now I'll jump off my soapbox and I'll introduce the first pairing here, which is just covered in condensation because it's been wildly humid here lately. So I'm going to wipe it off so I don't get water on my laptop.
Right, I've already revealed it.
Oh, okay. Already revealed. There you go. Our first pairing is Traverse City Whiskey Company's pre-made old-fashioned cocktail. Ooh. I am stoked because this is the first cocktail that we've had on the show. And so they have two different old fashions that are pre-made. This is just the original, the traditional old fashioned. They also have a cherry one, but this one's just made with their bourbon, simple syrup, bitters, and they say citrus expression. So I'm guessing they're somehow getting some of that citrus peel expressed into it. And it says made with 6-year-old whiskey, so it does have an age statement on it. Now their other one that they have is made with their Traverse City cherry bourbon. So it's not just bourbon. It might not even be considered labeled bourbon at all. It might just be labeled flavored whiskey or flavored beverage. But I believe it is their bourbon that they then infuse with cherry flavoring. So then it's no longer a bourbon because it's been infused with flavoring. But that's the other one, which we will be having on a future episode here. But I'm just excited to have a cocktail with this. I haven't even taken a sip yet. Looks like Adam's enjoying it though.
Dude, that is like one of the better old fashions I've ever had.
They did a good job. I've only had one glass of it. Yeah, they did a good job. I think.
Yeah, Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say it's got a very spicy, not in the black pepper way, like baking spice forward flavor to it. It's almost got like a little bit of a clove or a nutmeg, like that sort of a thing.
And what I like about it too is my pet peeve with a lot of other old-fashioned cocktails out there that are in a bottle or a can or whatever is they're way too light, right? I don't know if they're trying to save money or whatever
Right.
it is on the bourbon side, on the actual alcohol side, and they're just putting fruity stuff in it. But this tastes like me pouring an old fashioned, like a little
Mm-hmm.
heavy hand and a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
This, like, I feel like you can really get the bourbon out of it. It's something that, in my opinion, cigar lounges always have a heavier pour on old fashions than like just a regular old bar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I am loving that Traverse City old fashioned. I mean, like, wow, really,
Good.
yeah, I'm
And
super impressed.
I didn't notice this until you said that, because I know a lot of times, like even flavored whiskeys, so like Crown Apple, will be like 35% alcohol by volume, and that's a flavored whiskey. That's not even a cocktail. This is 37% alcohol by volume, so it's a little bit above even that. So you're talking about the same strength of drinking a flavored Crown Royal straight. And we actually don't even have ours in the rocks because Adam and I both joked that we forgot to grab ice and rocks glasses before this episode. So
No, Chris, we were gonna tell everybody we were keeping it even. Come on, we gotta
that's
try and
what it.
act like we're professionals here.
I just mean that we're so unbiased that we had to keep everything even. And yeah.
Don't drink your old fashions neat, but I could drink this neat all day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, on the rocks,
Totally.
so oh man, a little chilled would be
Yeah.
delicious, even more. I
And
am
that's what I
super
like about it being
blown away.
halfway strong is like if you put it on a rock, it's not going to just taste like water. So like very impressed. We say this a lot. They're not paying us to say this, guys. But
Nope.
it is impressive. It's really good.
Very, very impressive. Now, I haven't thought about it since we started, since I did get to it, finally announced that I loved what was going on here with this Traverse City Old Fashioned. But going back to the Grand Architect, in the beginning, I noticed more of the but baking spices that you were mentioning in the cigar. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
bringing out almost the true nature of the Corojo. Um, where some people may be, a Corojo can be like black peppery or it can be baking spicy. So it's really tough, and I don't want to turn people off that don't don't like that spice, but this is definitely a good spice and not too heavy. For those of you out there, I'm not a super fan of a black pepper bomb. Like, I think I've been very
Mm-hmm.
clear about that almost this whole time on either, the whiskey side or the cigar side. Just not a fan. I feel like one, it burns like crazy on the retrohale, which this doesn't. So that's, sign number one that it's baking spice more. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. What are you getting out of this pairing so far?
I'm right there with you. I think the Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect is getting more baking spicy, and I would argue that the Traverse City Whiskey Company Old Fashioned is getting less so, which I really like because it was a little too clovey for me by itself. I still really enjoy it. It's just a little bit more clove than I would personally like from the bitters, I'm guessing. But now it's really orangey, like that orange peel infusion, that flavor from expressing the citrus totally pops. Like it's the first thing I taste. And the first time I sat down and had it without a cigar, I don't remember tasting it nearly as much. I remember mainly tasting the baking spices. So it's kind of like the baking spices almost moved to the cigar where they're more enjoyable. And then the citrus in the old fashioned came out, which is very enjoyable. Definitely, this is like a very good relax type pairing, especially if you're newer to the Corojos or to something that has more of a spice to it. This is a nice, sweet, easy to drink whiskey, easy to smoke cigar. Really good pairing. Really good pairing.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I feel going from the Grand Architect to the Traverse City Old Fashioned, because it's not bitter. Maybe you can help me out, kind of keep me between the lines, but it's not a
Mm-hmm.
bitterness. It's maybe I don't think it's the clove that you were talking about. It's I mean, would this have like a old fashions have bitters, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, maybe it is bringing out the bitters
Mm-hmm.
of the old fashioned. Maybe that is what I'm getting.
I think especially compared to all the whiskeys that we usually try with this, because like that's not a sensation that we've had yet where you've had anything with bitters in it along with a cigar. So for sure it almost is. I think it might be because like the cigar is such a different flavor from the bitters that you kind of notice them. I would agree with you there, but I think the bitters taste less like the clove and more like the oranges, but there's a bitterness there. It's kind of like if you just bite an orange peel. I think we've said that before. But when you know how orange peels themselves are bitter. Yeah.
Yep, you nailed it right there. It's the orange peel is what it is. That's definitely, which is super crazy. I mean, there's no orange peel in there. Like,
yeah. I want to know what they say there's citrus expression. I want to know how they do that. I might have to like ask them how they do that.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Huh.
But it's definitely a decent one to start off with.
Yeah.
I mean, my ash is holding strong here. Just clean construction. I was so excited to smoke this cigar.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what happens because we've got two pretty, not radical, but pretty different whiskeys coming up next. So to introduce our next pairing, we've got Old Forester's 1920. This is their Prohibition style bourbon. I forget if there's anything specific here or if it's just that it's a Prohibition style recipe. Okay, yeah. So during Prohibition, Old Forester was bottled as a medicinal whiskey. And so the typical barrel proof at that time prior to bottling was 115. And so they've got a 115 proof whiskey that is apparently Prohibition style, I would say. They claim similar to what they would have been producing as a medicinal whiskey. I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is it tastes good because I've had it before, and most of Old Forester's Whiskey Row series I'm a fan of, and this is a part of that.
Yeah, it reminds me, like when you said medicinal, I'm like, I wonder if they'll like be like, and when weed finally gets like completely legalized, they'll be like, this was the medicinal blend.
It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
And then because I'm sitting here like, this was medicinal for what? And I'm sure in 300 years it'll be the same.
What a parallel, though. I didn't even think about it like that, but like that's exactly how the way we treated weed back when it was just medicinally legal, in some states it still is exactly the same as how whiskey was treated during Prohibition. That's wild to think about, which makes you wonder if in a couple hundred years people will be the same way that we are with whiskey. They're like, they really thought this was good for your health. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I think it's good for my health, but
Right. But they thought whiskey was, and they thought whatever Coca-Cola's original formula, look that one up if you don't know. They thought that was good for you. Yeah, there's a reason it's named Coke.
Right off the bat, I'll go ahead and give you a second to try this pairing. I'm feeling there's definitely night and day. I mean, we went from what proof? So 30, that's what, like 84?
74.
No, 74. Yeah, 37. Yeah. So 74 to 115. I mean, holy crap. We got a like huge swing here, 40-point swing. My math is off today. 41 for those out there counting. My mom was a math teacher. Mom, if you're listening, I know you're not, but I got it right. But 41 point swing on your proof. I noticed it right away, so I think I'm going to have to let my palate get introduced to it. I did forget my water again for everybody out there that's going to slap me on the wrist. But yeah, that was a pretty big swing, but I think just straight off the bat that this is going to be hopefully antagonistic because I have not gone back to the cigar yet. So I'm going to take one more sip. I think my palate's been acclimated to, the 115 proof now. Take a little bit of sip of that 1920 Old Forester, go back to this Grand Architect, see what I'm working with.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I even needed some time for my palate to adjust, and 115 is like my favorite proof. So it was definitely a sharp change of proof point here. But I will say, I think you're probably right that it's antagonistic. I think the Old Forester, weirdly enough, smells a little bit better. I think the nose is a little bit sweeter, but I don't think the palate is really there. I think if anything, it might be dampened down a little bit. So maybe this just isn't the pairing for Old Forester 1920. That's just my guess so far. I do think the cigar is still tasting really good. I think something in it is elevated, or if it's not elevated, it's at least different from whatever was in the old-fashioned pairing. So something's different. I haven't really nailed down what it is yet. Something is being a little bit elevated, but I'm going to really try to rinse out with some more water and try again. But so far, 1920, not really. It's a little bit dampened down, I would say.
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're getting, and it makes sense that it's like, whoa, what's happening here? When you go from the 1920 to the Grand Architect, you're getting that Lajero in that filler. It's coming out. If you have ever had the opportunity out there to smoke Lajero by itself, I mean, you know why that is what adds strength to cigars. I mean, literally, I've been, experimenting and learning how to blend cigars now with, doing the Rodman cigar, doing the Onward Dreams, and smoking these fumas or puritos, the little one single strand of tobacco. When you get to that Lajero, you're like, whoa, okay, that would add some strength. And we're even playing with we're blending a heavy cigar right now for Onward Dreams. We actually did decide on the official blend a couple weeks ago, but when we were blending it, we're like, how much Lajero do we want to, because you don't want to go too strong, but when you hear, Chris, have you ever had LFD cigars?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I have. I'm like 9. I can picture the label, so I feel like I had to have had it.
Yeah, it's like a dark maroon kind of ish label with gold lettering usually. But they are known for Lajero, and they have a cigar that's called a Double Digger that has double Lajero.
Ooh.
So a lot. It's one of the strongest cigars I've ever had, if not the strongest. And that is what this cigar is now reminding me of when I took a puff. Is first off, I had the Onward Dreams kind of experience that I was going back to, smoking that Fuma, all just pure Lajero. And then, as it's been sitting on my palate, it's just like, if you love LFD, guys, if LFD is more kind of out there in the public than Hiram and Solomon. If you love LFD, guys, grab a 3-pack of this for sure. It's on our website. It's only $24.99. Grab them while you can because they do go quickly. If you were in the Perfect Pairing Club and you had the opportunity to get this cigar in the pack, then try and think about that when you're smoking this. I mean, you're going to be like, whoa, it's like LFD blended this cigar all of a sudden because of this Old Forester 1920. It's really kind of throwing me off.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I do want to make a quick comment because I think it's really a really good example. I started off with a pretty bad burn because I have new fans in here, and I think that's causing it to burn strangely on top, if you know what I mean. It is correcting itself, though, so you can kind of see it in real time. I'll show it to the side camera, and I'll show it to the main camera here. It's almost got that last piece right there. It's about to correct it, so it's doing a really good job. I just had to flip it upside down because I've got weird air movement going on in this room right now. So wanted to point that out. But jumping to the pairing, I don't want to bias you. So I want you to tell me your honest and true opinion. So that's totally fine. But I'm going to say this is a flop of a pairing for me. The cigar I still think tastes good, and I actually really liked it. It had a little bit of a spicy kick to it. The bourbon is almost non-existent for me right now. Like, it almost just tastes like alcohol. And that is not to say anything about this bourbon, this Old Forester 1920, because I love Old Forester 1920. It just does not mesh with this cigar, in my personal opinion. So I will openly admit, I think this one's a fail, at least for my palate.
Yeah, maybe I'm thrown off. And maybe we're both thrown off, where I'll give a half validation towards your point, but I'm also going to give a devil's advocate point here. I mean, that 41-point swing was a big swing. And we're not talking like we went from an Irish whiskey that was just light and soft to, heavy something. We went from like a fruity old fashioned to, 115 that I think kind of, if I remember correctly, I haven't drank a lot of it. I've probably had it, I don't know, 3 or 4 glasses of it. This is probably my 5th tasting total. So I can't say I know it as well as you do. So I got to kind of bow to you on that end and say, okay, if you're saying that, I do trust you, and I don't want to bias anybody else out there to my opinion just because I'm trying to give, Old Forester a little bit of credit here and play the devil's advocate side. But I remember it being strong. Like, I feel like I remember a little oomph in it. So, and I don't know if my palate is refined enough to tell the difference between oomph in a little bit of bourbon and, okay, that's just alcohol.
Right. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And I will give you that it's got the heat to it. It's definitely a whiskey that has the flavor with the heat. Like the heat comes with the flavor. But I still think I think what's going to really tell is this third pairing, because then I'll know if my palate was just thrown off by how sweet that old fashioned was, or if it is the Old Forester. Because I mean, I tried swishing out with water, went back to it, swished out with water, went back to it, and I'm still, it tastes almost like watered down bourbon that burns more than a watered down bourbon. Like it burns the same amount as bourbon would burn, but it tastes watered down to me. And I can't say that's enough, and we say it all the time, guys, but it's nothing against the Old Forester from 1920. We'll definitely be trying it with some more pairings now. But I think it's just this pairing. It's just not meshing for me.
Yeah, and I think probably the other side is where I don't want to just like throw this pairing out the back door is I like what it's doing to the cigar. I mean, it is truly, guys, it is truly now a Maduro. It is a heavy Maduro, in my opinion now. It like completely transformed. Any of the light notes are completely gone. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it definitely is. It's peppery. It's full-bodied. Like the slight chocolatey flavor that a lot of Corojos give me, gone. Yeah, definitely.
It's just you talk about a bourbon-y bourbon. This is a Maduro-y Corojo somehow. Like but it tastes like if you closed your eyes, had this pairing, you'd be like, man, that's one strong cigar. But I mean, they do it. It does have, at least 2 strands of Lajero. They don't say if it's one full leaf of Lajero from Jalapa and one from Esteli, and they don't say if the Paraguay tobacco was Lajero too. I mean, there may be, kind of a triple blend of Lajero in the middle or in the bottom of the cigar. So, maybe it is a little bit. I do definitely think it's medium full though. This is not a medium bodied cigar.
Yeah. It leans towards the full. It's it reminds me of that last Corojo that we had, except with less of the chocolate notes, which would, kind of make it sweeter, make it a little more approachable. It definitely leans more towards those spices. Now, jumping into pairing number 3, I'll give you a second to do that while I explain what it is and explain what I'm getting from it. I jumped ahead. That way I could talk a little bit. Pairing number 3 is 15 Stars. This is their Triple Cask number 2. So, hold on to your seats here. This is Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, finished in cognac, rum, and apple brandy casks. It's 103 proof, and I've got bottle number 1,575. So, this triple cask, meaning it's finished in those 3 different casks. 3 different casks. Once again, cognac, rum, and apple brandy casks. And Adam and I both agreed offline talking about this. It is a strange one. It is hard to get your hands around what's going on. In a good way, I think. I mean, at least for me, it's in a good way because it's super interesting. It's hard to get your hands around what exactly is going on because the 3 different casks bring three pretty different flavors. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and brag a little bit because I do have bottle number 1,572. So,
oh, you beat me.
Gotcha. But I'm going to say something about this bourbon. I was waiting because I was staring at it and I was trying to figure it out. And as you guys can tell, if you didn't see Chris's bottle, if you're on the pod or on the audio version, he pretty much just cracked it open and is trying it. But I have been stumped by this thing and I have been trying to figure it out like crazy since we've received it, because is the flavor, I feel like it is really barrely.
Yes, that's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say. You said you had like something you wanted to say, but you wouldn't tell. That was exactly what I was hoping you were going to go for. Yep.
But I don't understand because
Mm-hmm.
every finish we've had, that's especially you talk about our Sonoma triple finish from Woodford that we both was just like fruity and juicy and
Mm-hmm.
amazing and had our highest pairings ever and whatever. This is a triple cask that's got cognac, rum, and apple brandy. You'd think you're getting a
Mm-hmm.
fruity flavor. I don't know if I'm getting fruit. I'm getting wood.
It's very barrelly fruity, like barely being used in a different way now. It's
Okay, I
only
thought that was a pun. I was
slightly.
like, that's not funny.
It wasn't a purpose, no pun intended. I'm
Barely fruity.
very slightly fruity is what I mean by that. So the barrel characteristic comes through more than the fruit characteristic. Like this is if you think finished whiskeys taste too fruity and they don't taste enough like whiskey, this is the answer to that, in my personal opinion. This 15 Stars Triple Cask has more barrel and less of the fruit. So they're still letting that flavor come through of the whiskey, in my personal opinion. Now, that being said, I think the fruitiness is being magnified a little bit by this pairing, especially in the Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect. I want to see if it gets magnified more in the 15 stars or not. But I also want to go back later when we go to do our rankings. I'm going to revisit the Old Forester because it did take me a few sips for the 15 stars to really ramp up in flavor. So I almost feel like we should have done this pairing in complete reverse. Like we should have done these three in complete reverse. So I am going to jump back and try the Old Forester here in a minute. But to give 15 stars its moment in the spotlight, I think I love that it is finished and doesn't taste overly finished. For me personally, as somebody who I love finished whiskeys, and I'm not afraid to say it, I love when they're sweet. I love when the finish is super obvious. But I love that this is something in the middle you don't get a lot. Usually it's either finished, obviously, or not a finished whiskey. This is like nicely in the middle, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean the barrel-y characteristic of this throws me off because it is not
Mm-hmm.
often you taste any whiskey this barrel-y.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? Like there's so much barrel in here because I've
Yeah.
had one other brand. It's a small distillery in northern Kentucky called Pensive Distilling.
Mm-hmm.
They did this same kind of approach, and I was super early on. It was probably like 2 years ago now, something like that, maybe a year and a half, something like that, when I was introduced to them for the first time, and I went, well, "What the heck is that? Like that
Mm-hmm.
just tastes like wood. Why does it taste like wood? You left that in the barrel too long." And they're like, "No, I mean like that's what we did on purpose." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry."
Right. It
Like
totally depends on
I
what
did not
flavor you're
know.
going for. But this, now that you say that, I looked and it is a blend of 16 and 8-year-old whiskeys. So 16's pretty old. So
That
that
makes
would
sense.
be why it's so barely. Does it say if it's yeah, it's Kentucky straight bourbon too. So 16 years old for a bourbon is very old. So that explains why it's so barely, for sure.
Yeah,
Um, I would say, yeah, I would say this is very barely for something that's not double oaked or made specifically to taste barrely. This definitely has a lot of that wood influence to it. So if you're somebody who doesn't like woody notes, this probably won't be for you. If you know me, I love woody notes. Like I like Cooper's Craft Barrel Reserve, which has a really heavy barrel influence. Woodford Reserve Double Oak, really heavy barrel influence. Ironically, Old Forester 1910, very heavy barrel influence. We have 1920 right now, to be clear. So yeah, I really enjoy that. But no, that's a very good point that you made.
that's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back. I got a little Woodford Reserve double oaked. I'm gonna have to go back. Maybe I'll do that as my fourth pairing off
Mm-hmm.
camera here because I'm gonna have to go back and have that with this cigar to see, kind of the similarities here. But what I didn't get the opportunity to say, and I wanted to make sure I got in, is this 15 stars going back to the Grand Architect is definitely presenting that fruitiness, and it's so odd for me because it's like I don't know how many times this has happened in this entire pairing experience that we've been doing this. All of that triple finish, all of the finishes, I don't really get in the whiskey, but I do out of the cigar. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how that works. Like, it's like they're hidden in the whiskey because of just the age in the barrels, but it's still there. It's just covered. And then
Yep.
in the cigar's like, wood notes? Yeah, what's up? I got it too. Cancel that out.
Mm-hmm.
What else you got for me? Oh, whoa, you got apple brandy? You got some rum? You got some cognac? I can take all that. Yeah, let's do it. And then it's just
Mm-hmm.
popping, and it's really interesting. I mean, very very different from the pairing with the 1920, the Old Forester 1920, to
Mm-hmm.
where the cigar is now back
Mm-hmm.
on the medium-bodied spectrum. Uh, that Corojo that I think you like more on that end. It's very interesting. I'm excited to go back to the old fashioned and see the comparison between, because if I'm saying this is fruity, going back to the old fashioned, is it just gonna like be like gushers, like
Right.
like in my mouth, or are they oddly similar? And if they are, how on earth is a barrely whiskey and an old fashioned creating the same flavor out of a cigar? That might be the most like confusing mystery of pairings we've had to date. So I'm excited to try that.
Yep. I could not agree more. I think even before I could taste the 15 stars very well. At first, I was really having trouble getting notes from it. Even before I was able to get the notes from it, I could taste it in the cigar. So it was like sip the whiskey, it doesn't really taste like much. Puff the cigar, whoa, that tastes like finishing. That tastes like a finished whiskey. Go back to the whiskey, can't really taste it very well. Go back to the cigar. This still tastes like a finishing process. So I could not agree with you more. Now, I will say back, forth a bunch to where I think my palate is reset. It's ready to go. When I jump back to the 15 stars, now finally I'm seeing that apple brandy finish. I got a little bit of that appley flavor. It's still very barrel heavy, though. It's an old whiskey, so you got to keep that in mind. But I got a little bit of that apple brandy finish that came through. So that lightened up the whiskey a little bit, and the cigar took on that fruitiness, got very sweet. Really nice pairing experience. I want to do a little bit more with it because, once again, Adam couldn't have said it better. This is a confusing whiskey. This takes some time to really get your hands around what's going on. So as a pairing, it's even more confusing. And I think this set of pairings, if it stays in the order that it currently is in my head, is a weird one that's so unintuitive because we have a relatively strong cigar that seems to be pairing better the lighter and more approachable the pairing is, which is weird. Like especially the less proof that the pairing is, which is so strange. So that is not something I ever saw coming. I've always said it's so unintuitive, but I still have some more tasting to do before I officially put my flag in the ground and say that that's the case.
I'm gonna give you some time here, because I'm gonna go ahead and just like let you guys know what's happening in my brain, because I am like contradicted so heavily on all of these pairings. In my opinion, the cigar tastes best with the Old Forester 1920. So that, in my opinion, the Grand Architect tastes best with the Old Forester 1920. But my favorite, going from this Grand Architect to the pairing, was the Traverse City Old Fashioned. So I'm like, okay, black and white there in terms of the pairings. We talked about the 41 proof swing, and then the 15 stars, in my opinion, is in the middle of how much I enjoyed the pairings. Obviously, that Old Forester 1920, like we said, just didn't do it. Like whatever the cigar was doing to it, it just didn't work. But going back to the cigar, does it land in the middle? I don't know. It may be better, maybe better than the old fashioned in terms of the cigar. So where do I?
Right.
It's like, do I rank it? Like, there's no. It's just, this is a mysterious episode. This is a great time to bring up the Discord, guys. Please, if you're a part of the Perfect Pairing Club, or if you're not and you just happen to have this cigar before, please put pairings in the Discord so we can figure out what is happening with this cigar, and we can help everyone else out there in the world figure out what's happening with this cigar, because it is a mystery on what is going to pair well and what is not going to pair well with it. I mean, there is no definitive answer today. That I'm so sorry for you guys that are, almost 40 minutes in, and you're just like, well, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to pair with this. Please pair something that we didn't have. And just just take one for the team this week and pair something that you didn't have. Go to the link in either Chris's bio or my bio on Dreamer Cigars and go to the Discord and tell us what you had and what your experience was. I would love to know. I'm gonna be dead set on paying attention to the Discord this week because we're gonna rely on you guys heavily. I know there's enough of you guys listening out there now that we can figure this out. So let's do this teamwork wise because Chris and I did the best we could, but I don't know if there was enough.
I think that's a perfect segue into explaining what I would try next with this Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect, because this has been not an unintuitive pairing. This has been an anti-intuitive pairing. This has been the opposite of what I thought was going to work. So next up, I know without a doubt I'm trying the Brook Lottie Classic Laddie. That would be it's the complete opposite of everything we've tried so far, and I got to know what happens if I try that.
I went, well, now I'm kind of, I've got two, but I'll say my first. I'm going to go with the Barrel Seagrass.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
Because I want to know, we're testing two different hypotheses here. You're testing, is it just lighter pairings? Is that what it is? I'm testing, I liked what the 1920 did to the cigar the most, right? This Old Forester 1920.
Right.
So is it just the Old Forester 1920? Something didn't gel with the flavors and the Old Forester 1920 went away. But if something like that Barrel Seagrass, which you know all too well, has a lot of complexity that I think has the potential to play with this cigar. But the other one mashes, again, I'm going higher proof, mashes the old fashioned, in my opinion, with the Old Forester 1920, and that's the Filmland Spirits Moonlight Mayhem.
Oh, yeah, a lot of flavor, but still high proof to see what would really happen there. I like that. I like that. I think that
last one just came to mind. Sorry.
Yeah,
last one just came to mind. I want to pop it in there. The Wheel Horse Cigar Blend.
Oh, I forgot about that one. Yes, that's a good one, too. That's like a heavy finish, which we don't really have in this episode, where you can really taste the finish. So that would be interesting. Before I do my rankings, I want to give one more shout out to the 15 Stars pairing with this Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect, because the more I drank it, the more I really got my palate coated with that 15 Stars Triple Cask. Then when I went to the cigar, the finishing kept getting more and more and more amped up to the point where it was almost citrus fruity. Like I know that's not in the finish. That's not a type of finish that this has, but it almost started to get this like tangy, almost sour fruitiness to it. So definitely, I think that one is a great example of just an extremely complex pairing. Like not necessarily approachable, not necessarily the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Ultra. It's not necessarily like that, where there's something obvious and huge out in the, but it's very nuanced and very complex. And the more you drink it, more stuff keeps popping up. So I wanted to give it a shout out for that reason. But I will jump into my rankings if you're ready to go with those.
All ready to go.
Okay. So it might not be a surprise to anybody, but my rankings I've got with the Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect. In number 1, I've got the Traverse City Whiskey Company pre-made Old Fashioned. Number 2, I've got the 15 Stars Triple Cask 2. And number 3, I've got the Old Forester 1920.
Ditto.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going back and forth. I explained it to you guys earlier, but in my opinion, what had the swing vote here for me, that Old Fashioned was phenomenal.
It
and
is.
I just enjoyed it that much better than the 15 Stars, that it just had to be elevated. And you guys are gonna find out in my ratings exactly why it just edged above, because I'll reveal it. If you know our rating system, I would recommend it.
Yes, totally agreed. When I jumped back to the Old Fashioned, I was actually more impressed. Like, I did jump back to the Old Forester before the Old Fashioned to make sure the Old Fashioned didn't mess it up, and it still just did not have very much flavor, which it just doesn't mesh with this specific cigar. Nothing wrong with that. But I jumped back to the Old Fashioned, dude. Talk about it. Made the Old Fashioned. This is a good pre-made Old Fashioned, I personally think I can make a better old fashioned than most pre-made old fashions in most bars, because if you don't know my content, I've made dozens of old fashions to try to perfect it. This made this old fashioned taste fantastic. Like, it really tastes nice, and it's a good pre-made old fashioned, but with a cigar, fantastic.
Agreed, 100%, 100%. Well, I'll go ahead and dive in. Since we had the same, you want to go top down?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, let's do top down. So with the Traverse City Whiskey pre-made old fashioned and the Grand Architect, I had an 8 flat because I'd recommend it. And that's kind of our rating, like, whatever. If you guys haven't listened, like 9 and above is a guarantee. 8 and above is like, I'd recommend it. Like, you should have it. You should try it. Anything below that is, question mark. Maybe it's just not it. But yeah, I'd recommend it, but not above an 8. Not above an 8 for me.
For me, ironically, I had it at an 8.8. I think it's maybe my obsession with perfecting old fashions, but I think the Grand Architect makes the pre-made old fashioned taste like kind of the best version of an old fashioned. Like, it's very fruity, very sweet, which is why you make an old fashioned, right? But it's still very bourbony. Like, you still get the bourbon flavor. So I really enjoyed that. And maybe it's also because without the cigar, that old fashioned has a little bit of a clovey taste to me, and I don't like clove very much. So it's a little bit too much clove for me. Throw it with the cigar, and it's really nice, really approachable. Plus, on top of that, the cigar tastes good with it. So right out of the gate, I put it at an 8.8, which is not like don't try anything else with it, but it's if I get this, I'm not looking for anything else. I know I'm going to have a great pairing. I'm going to be happy with it.
Yeah, I think it was the bitters for me that brought it down. And I think the bitters transferred too much to the cigar for me to where the cigar was, you're whiskey focused, I'm cigar focused. So for everybody out there, that's probably what that little discrepancy was there. So if you're whiskey focused or cigar focused, take that into consideration just a little bit.
It's almost that's why we partnered up.
Whoever thought of that's a genius, man.
Smart guy.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. No, I'm just kidding. So going down to number 2, we've got the 15 stars with the Grand Architect. I had a 7.9. It's right there, neck and neck. I was so undecided, and it's because cigar focused, whiskey focused, they were that close for me because I really enjoyed the whiskey a little bit more with the old fashioned than I did just the 15 stars. But I enjoyed the cigar more with the 15 stars than I did the old fashioned. So it landed right about the same.
I think that's very fair. I actually, being more whiskey focused, I jumped all the way down to a 7. And I think that was influenced by my third ranking, where it almost made me have a more even spread. Hint, hint, which I'll reveal here in a second.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's not the whiskey, it's the pairing, But I did love the way the 15 stars made the cigar taste. I think the 15 stars by itself is a lot more complex. The pairing was very complex, but the 15 stars lost some of that gusto that it has. So I just think there's a much better cigar out there for the 15 Stars Triple Cask. Jumping to the third pairing, I had to keep my spread almost even. So I did put the Old Forester 1920 at a 4.9 with the Hiram and Solomon Grand Architect. Personally, I would not recommend this as a pairing. I think there is a beautiful, perfect pairing cigar out there for the 1920. I do not think it's this cigar. That's just my opinion.
I had a 6.5. I wasn't as rough, but I had a 6.5 just because of the cigar. If you like the taste of fire and gasoline, maybe you'll put this at a 9. Because, it tastes like alcohol. It's very heavy. I mean, it almost brings it to like a 130 proof. Like, really, it really does. And I can't really drink a 130. I've gone close, and when I do that, I have to just barely coat my palate rather than take a sip, especially neat. Like, if I can do it on a rock, I feel like it brings it down at least 10 proof, like on the rocks. So, but
I have
6.5.
I have a theory that that's what's happening with this cigar is it is magnifying proof. It is making these taste stronger than the amount of flavor you're getting from them, which is not a bad thing. because so many cigars just trample anything lower proof. There are a lot of cigars that if we had this pre-made old fashioned with them, they would just get destroyed. Like the old fashioned, you wouldn't even taste it anymore. And so it's a good trait, just not with the pairings that I picked for it. I feel like in both cases, the Old Forester and the 15 Stars, the proof got amplified. And so that's my theory, I think, with this cigar.
Agreed. I like it. I'm going to go ahead and jump into, because I know we're deep into this podcast, the trivia question this week. The trivia question was, what is the most common thing that will cause your cigar to canoe, burn, have a runner, burn unevenly, whatever it is, burn on one side and not the other? And that is the user. That is the light.
Oh,
that is how you light the cigar. Because majority of premium cigars, I mean, they will fix. I'm glad you brought it up because it fixed itself, right? Mm-hmm. And like, even the wind was going on and it fixed itself because a good cigar will. But if you leave it, because what I was doing is I lit it up and then I noticed there was like a tip at the top that was still black. And if I would have just put it down, it probably, I'm on my second ash here. This is just phenomenal construction. Mm-hmm. A really, really good cigar will fix it most of the time. But if you're a guy, if you're not on the audio or visual version, guys, on YouTube, I'm sorry, but if you're a guy that puts your lighter right underneath your cigar and puts that cigar right up to your mouth and just lights and doesn't twist, that's why, because you're also, by the way, burning the actual cigar, not just the foot. Don't burn the leaf, just burn the foot. Don't burn the wrapper. But that's what a lot of people do, right? They just flip their lighter open, turn it on, start puffing, and they don't twist the cigar. They don't, try and make sure it's evenly lit. It happens all the time. Guys, when I learned that like 4 years ago, 5 years ago probably now, I was like, man, like cigars, I don't know. I hate they, unravel, they burn unevenly. Like it's so inconsistent. I don't even know if I'm smoking a good one. I've probably never smoked a good one. And then when I learned that, I probably fixed 99% of my burn issues.
Yep.
Was actually lighting correctly. And
which
that
can
means
impact the
that's
flavor, at least in my experience. It can make it taste kind of rough if you're just burning that wrapper and you're not getting the foot properly.
Absolutely. Part of what you're smoking is the burnt part, but not lit part of the tobacco, right? Because you're pulling in the smoke from that cigar, and if half of it's barely burnt, because when you knock that ash off and part of it's canoed, it's all black and charred, that's what you're tasting.
Exactly.
That char. So, just make sure you're lighting your cigars in correctly, not incorrectly.
Because this is a theory that I have, and I don't know if it's true or not. I think I made it up. Does toasting the foot help that? You know how you can like really get a good toast on there before you light it?
Absolutely.
Everything's like preheated and it lights easier. It doesn't just light in one spot.
Absolutely. If you have the time, the wind control and all that, toast your foot all the way. I think honestly, I'm just too impatient to do it. I think that's the right, like if you really wanted to like do this the right way, every single time you should toast the foot completely. Like you're talking the orange all the way around, no black spots, and then go ahead, put the cigar to your mouth, take a couple puffs, get the heat moving a little bit in the cigar, and you're done. I think that is 100%. I mean, it's really not even debated in the cigar world. That's how most people say you should light a cigar. Some people, in the industry, a lot of us are like, when you're having 3 or 4 a day, it's like,
right.
But, it's important, like when you're going through it and when you're tasting, when you're doing tastings and all that sort of stuff. If you guys notice in this podcast, I usually do toast it a good bit, and then I'll take a couple puffs. So that's probably why you guys don't see me light my cigar very often, because I'm toasting it. But, Chris, I think this was a great episode, man. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you didn't get this cigar, if you're not a part of the Perfect Pairing Club, go to shopdreamercigars.com, use code PPP10, get 10% off every single month. And Chris, I'm going to go ahead and pour me some more old fashioned because that was delicious.
I actually am too. Cheers.
Nice.